Ancient Egypt is widely remembered as one of the greatest and most mysterious civilizations in history. But what if I told you that behind the majestic pyramids, golden sarcophagi, and powerful pharaohs, there was a world that would look absolutely insane to us today? The Egyptians used things that a modern person would never dream of finding useful. They developed medical practices and monuments so massive that even our modern achievements pale in comparison. And some of their daily habits, rituals, and beliefs were so bizarre, it's honestly hard to believe they actually happened. But the wildest part, most of these facts are fully backed up by historians and archaeologists. Today, you're going to discover the most shocking and lesser-known facts about ancient Egypt, and they only get crazier with every single story. The Great Pyramid of Giza, built for the pharaoh Khufu, is easily one of the most mind-blowing structures in human history. Constructed around 2560 BC, it originally stood at a massive 146 meters tall. What's truly insane is that no other building on Earth could beat its height record for nearly 3,800 years. It wasn't until the Middle Ages that European cathedrals finally managed to top it. Pulling this off required roughly 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing anywhere from 2 to 15 tons. For a long time, popular myth claimed the pyramid was built entirely by slaves. But modern archaeological discoveries tell a completely different story. The workers actually lived in specialized villages right next to the construction site, received quality food and medical care, and were respected as a vital part of a massive state project. But what really blows minds is the sheer precision of the engineering. The sides of the pyramid are aligned with the cardinal directions with unbelievable accuracy, with a margin of error of just a few arc minutes. Even today, modern engineers are baffled by how ancient builders achieved this level of perfection without a single modern instrument. Visually, the pyramid looked completely different back then compared to what we see today. Originally, it was encased in smooth, polished white limestone panels that brilliantly reflected the sun. On a clear day, the monument would literally gleam on the horizon, visible from dozens of kilometers away. For the people of Egypt, it served as a blinding symbol of the pharaoh's divine power and the ultimate grandeur of their empire. A lot of people picture ancient Egyptians as lacking basic hygiene, but the reality was completely different. They actually paid huge attention to bodily cleanliness and dental care. In fact, archaeologists have discovered recipes for ancient toothpaste that are well over 4,000 years old. To whip up this primitive paste, they used crushed eggshells, pumice, ash, and aromatic herbs. They would apply the mixture to a specialized stick or a piece of cloth and scrub away the plaque. Sure, this paste was way more abrasive than anything we use today, but it genuinely helped keep their mouths clean. The real problem lay elsewhere, though. Tiny particles of sand constantly made their way into their bread and other food, which literally ground down their tooth enamel over time. Because of this, many Egyptians suffered from severe dental issues. Despite that, Egyptian doctors did their best to treat teeth, soothe inflammation, and even craft primitive dental prosthetics. Medical papyri have preserved various recipes for toothache remedies, some of which used honey for its natural antibacterial properties. The Egyptians also relied on aromatic oils as breath fresheners. This fact just goes to show that dental hygiene was a priority long before modern medicine. Many of the routines we take for granted today have their absolute roots right there in the civilization of ancient Egypt.
The mummification process was way more complicated than most people think. For the ancient Egyptians, preserving the body after death was an absolute must for the afterlife. They believed the soul needed to be able to return to its body, so they went to extreme lengths to protect it from decay. The entire procedure took about 70 days. First, embalmers would remove the internal organs, which were the quickest to decompose, and place them in special vessels called canopic jars. Next, they treated the body with a substance called natron, a natural blend of salts that effectively stripped away all moisture. Once the body was completely dried out, it was rubbed down with essential oils, resins, and perfumes. Then came the painstakingly long process of wrapping it in linen bandages. Special amulets were tucked between the layers of cloth to shield the deceased in the underworld. The highest quality mummies are so well preserved that modern scientists can actually study the diseases, diets, and even facial features of people who lived over 3,000 years ago. Thanks to CT scans, researchers can now literally look inside the mummies without damaging them at all. Mummification is widely considered one of the most impressive achievements of ancient science. The Egyptians racked up an incredible amount of knowledge regarding human anatomy, even though their primary goal was religious ritual, not medicine. Even though most Egyptian rulers were men, history has seen a few extraordinary female pharaohs. The most famous of them all is Hatshepsut, who ruled back in the 15th century BC. Stepping into power during a time of political instability, she managed to transform Egypt into one of the most prosperous empires of its era. Under her reign, trade flourished like never before, and majestic temples and monuments sprang up across the land. Interestingly enough, in many of her official portraits, Hatshepsut was depicted wearing the traditional pharaonic false beard. This was a strategic move to cement her status as a legitimate ruler, since ultimate power was traditionally tied to men. Her reign also saw the organization of legendary trade expeditions to the mysterious land of Punt, bringing back gold, frankincense, exotic animals, and rare plants. These massive voyages poured an incredible amount of wealth directly into the kingdom's coffers. After her death, some of her successors tried their best to completely wipe her memory from history, smashing her statues and defacing her inscriptions. Fortunately, modern archaeologists have managed to piece her story back together, and today she is widely celebrated as one of the most successful rulers of the ancient world.
Cats held a truly unique status in ancient Egypt, one that's hard to compare to how animals were treated in almost any other ancient civilization. To the Egyptians, a cat wasn't just a household pet or a handy rodent hunter. They were seen as sacred creatures, deeply intertwined with divine powers and the protection of the home. Because of this, cats achieved a legendary status, making them some of the most revered animals in human history. Originally, the Egyptian love for cats started for purely practical reasons. The Nile Valley was one of the most fertile regions on Earth, allowing the Egyptians to store massive surpluses of grain. But with great harvests came mice and rats, which could easily wipe out a whole village's food supply. Wildcats naturally started hunting these pests near human settlements, and the locals quickly realized their worth. Over time, this practical partnership blossomed into a close bond. that eventually evolved into full-blown religious worship. The goddess Bastet played a massive role in this cult. She was revered as the protector of the home, family, motherhood, joy, and a shield against evil forces. In Egyptian art, Bastet was usually depicted as a woman with the head of a cat, or simply as a cat herself. Grand temples were built in her honor, and her festivals and religious ceremonies were some of the most popular in the country. The reverence for cats was so intense that harming one was considered a severe crime. Some ancient historians even claimed that accidentally killing a cat could trigger a furious mob. While a few of these individual stories might be slightly exaggerated, archaeological evidence absolutely backs up just how much unprecedented respect the Egyptians had for these animals.
For the ancient Egyptians, keeping track of time was absolutely critical. Their entire civilization depended on the Nile River, which flooded every single year, leaving behind rich, fertile silt across the fields. If farmers miscalculated the exact window to plant or harvest their crops, it could easily trigger a widespread famine. That's exactly why they developed one of the most advanced calendar systems in the ancient world. They eventually noticed that the annual flooding of the Nile perfectly lined up with the appearance of Sirius, the brightest star in the morning sky. By tracking this phenomenon over generations, Egyptian priests were able to calculate the exact length of a solar year. Their calendar spanned 365 days, split into 12 30-day months, with 5 extra celebratory days tacked onto the very end of the year. This was a massive leap forward compared to pretty much every other civilization of that era. With this reliable system in hand, they could seamlessly map out agriculture, massive building projects, religious festivals, and public works. Egyptian officials were able to prep for the Nile's floods well in advance, effortlessly orchestrating the labor of thousands of people. What's fascinating is that their calendar was only off by about a quarter of a day each year. Later down the line, this exact Egyptian blueprint laid the foundation for more refined timekeeping systems, eventually giving rise to the modern calendar we use today. In a very real way, the system we rely on to track our days right now has its absolute roots in ancient Egypt, stretching back more than 4,000 years. Ancient Egyptian medicine was incredibly advanced for its time. Thanks to the practice of mummification, the Egyptians had an excellent grasp of human anatomy and racked up a wealth of experience in treating all kinds of illnesses. Several medical papyri have survived to this day, packed with hundreds of recipes and detailed descriptions of various conditions. They cover everything from bone fractures and burns to infections, eye diseases, and a whole host of other health issues. Some of these ancient recommendations look surprisingly sound, even from the standpoint of modern science. For instance, Egyptian doctors knew exactly how to set splints for broken bones, stitch up open wounds, and use honey to ward off infections. Today, we know that honey genuinely has powerful antibacterial properties. They also relied on a wide range of medicinal plants, many of which are still actively used in medicine to this day. What's particularly fascinating is how specialized their doctors were. Egypt had dedicated experts for eyes, teeth, digestion, and various other parts of the body. This means that even back then, the medical profession was surprisingly sophisticated and highly structured. Of course, a lot of their methods were deeply rooted in religious beliefs and magic, but right alongside those spells and incantations, doctors heavily relied on practical knowledge and real-world observation.
That's exactly why Egyptian medicine heavily influenced the healing arts of later Mediterranean civilizations.